Our opening words this morning come from Marilyn Falkowski. We welcome you. We know you come for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know that you come from different places, different religious backgrounds, different beliefs, different places. We hope you will find comfort and connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our congregation, in our local community, and in the world community. Welcome. Let us worship.
Our first reading, Letters number 4 to a Young Poet, Rilke, translated by Stephen Mitchell. Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms and books written in a foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer.
I invite you into a time of centering, prayer, meditation with the words of Sue Eyre. Spirit of life and love, we have gathered here in search of answers to hard questions. We've come in search of understanding, in search of community. We've come in search of hope and healing. Let this place be not only of searching, but of discovery. Let this be a place of learning, but also of wisdom. Let this be a place not only of meeting, but of connection. And let this place be a place where healing fosters giving and hope fosters service. This is our prayer, that we may create here a circle of love, ever expanding, ever growing, always open, as we seek to know the source of our being. Amen.
This reading is from Blessed with Questions by Rev. Tet Gustillo Gallardo. Some came here to be blessed with answers in a tumultuous world. Let us hope too, however, that many of us have been blessed with questions to direct us with the clarity of mind, to steer our logic towards kindness and justice always.
It has been asserted that good questions are better, more important than good answers. Good questions, after all, point us in the right direction and may suggest other useful questions. Even good answers, if you don't know what the question was, are kind of useless. Fans of Hitchhiker's Guide will recognize that. We Unitarian Universalists are people committed to uncovering new truth, better truth. And so we celebrate asking questions, hard questions even, the ones that make you feel like maybe you didn't understand the situation before. So here are some of your questions. Where have you lived? That should be a short answer, you think, and the answer is that may take me a while. Years ago, I filled out the paperwork for a government security clearance, and I could not fit my answers in the spaces available. And I did not actually give them the information they asked for because in some cases I literally couldn't. What cities have you visited? Yeah, no. I was born in Colorado. I'm a native of Denver. My family lived there twice while I was growing up. My brother was born in Lompoc, California when I was about 2. A couple years later, we were outside of Omaha, Nebraska, where my sister was born. We ended up back in Southern California. And then from there, we moved to Australia. My father was a transient worker, an aerospace engineer, always working on the edge of some military, usually Air Force facility. So we were in the outback in a little town called Woomera. And I spent a year living in Adelaide at a Scots Presbyterian boarding school. That was educational. When we left Australia, my father had taken a job which took us to Europe. We lived in Brussels, Belgium, actually, technically just across the street from Brussels, Belgium, where Dad was a traveling satellite part salesman. And I came back to the US to go to college, going to school for a year in Houston. Then I was back in Southern California, in the LA area, then in San Diego. And after college, when my wife and I got married, we lived in northern Utah. We returned to Southern California. From there, we moved to New Hampshire. And then from New Hampshire, I went and spent most of a year serving a congregation in Auburn, Lewiston, Maine. After that year, I came here. So far, I don't know. I lost count there. I have lived all over. I've really described myself as being something of a potted plant. I have roots, but they go with me. Why do you talk as much as you do about old religious texts? And I do. It's a professional failing. About old religious texts, individuals, and occurrences. I like to think we learn more and more as time passes, and like how owning people is wrong. Shouldn't we be talking more about contemporary truths? Why does talking about these old religious things discomfit me so? There's a couple questions there. Unitarian Universalism lays claim to all of the experience, the religious scriptures, the literature, the history of the world. We draw on all of it. And that means that we do not exclude any of it. I have written services which indeed are based on the text of Hitchhiker's Guide. Okay? Everything is fair game. But religious scriptures are places that many, many, many people have spent a lot of time thinking about. If you take them as literal truth, the word of God, you're going to have a problem with it. And people do. They trip themselves up. If you take them as considerations of deep human experiences and problems, they remain live. And so the experiences of people who lived thousands of years ago are just as meaningful to us. You can look at the book of Job. What's the point of suffering? Why do we suffer? What's it all about? How did that stop being relevant to our era? It's still a question. Why is this happening to me? If you go and speak to any of the people doing hospital chaplaincy, you hear that question over and over again. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my child? Why is this? We want to know why. We want to know why. Those texts are doorways into things worth considering. The answers you may have been told they provide you may be nonsense or have become nonsense. Talking about those texts and saying, this used to be used to justify owning people, encourages you to ask what other texts are being used in abusive ways today. How are we misinterpreting things so that we can harm other people or the world? Why does talking about these old religious things discomfort me so? I don't know that one. But I do understand the impulse there. And I think that in part it's because we have confused relations with these texts. The common discourse of so much of, I won't call it mainstream, but of public Christianity in America is that this text is the truth and it's unchanging and it speaks to us no matter what. But if you go and you talk to the people who have held those texts for the longest time, to the Jews, they will tell you these are places that we engage. They are a people who, much like us, argue with God. They argue with God all the time. Sometimes they win those fights. This thing that the texts tell you, what does it mean when you look at it and your heart and your soul scream out, that's wrong? Maybe there's another way to interpret that. Or maybe if you struggle with it for a while, you'll find a very different understanding of it. It's okay to be discomfited. In fact, I would argue that to be too comfortable keeps you right where you are and tempts you into the arrogance of knowing it all. None of us here have ever fallen into that trap, right? I reach out to those texts as well because they are hooks for people. This room with, a few dozen, several dozen people in it, right? We do not all share the same religious backgrounds. Even if we were raised in what is nominally the same Christian tradition, we were not. We do not understand them the same way. There are opportunities here to learn things, to dig in deeper, to go beyond those superficial teachings, and to heal from the religious wounds of our past. Something we've not been good about in the past. We were too willing to privilege woundedness. You were hurt. You will remain hurt. You can center your hurt. That's not healing. It's far more valuable to say, to get to the place where you have struggled with those things, decided what you can salvage, what you can let go, and say, I was hurt. I have healed. I have kept what was valuable, and I have let go of the rest, which is incidentally a theme you can find in some of the Christian scriptures. Hold to what is true. Yeah. Sometimes we have to look for the truth. Having served as both a board president and a congregational minister, can you share with us your observations of our congregation and how we can continue to grow and prosper? Small question. My observation is that congregations grow when they do what we call church, Well, when you do it seriously, when you do more than you were used to doing. You grow when you change. You grow when you accept that the wonderful way that it's always been isn't working well and needs to be let go of. You grow when things happen serendipitously and you're ready to go with it. We grow when we're flexible. We do not, I have yet to find a congregation that has had a truly conscious congregational growth program, because growth is a consequence, not a target. When you focus on certain things that are important, I mean, growth is important, much like fundraising is important. But if you make your congregational life and the efforts of your leadership about growth and about money, well, I can tell you I have yet to meet anyone who joined a congregation because they wanted to help that congregation make the budget or because they wanted to raise the membership numbers. People join congregations because they find a community, because they find a group of people who are doing important things in the world, and they want to be part of that, because they come in and they feel the energy and they hear people talking about the really life-saving, life-changing things that are going on that people are engaged in, and they want to be part of it. When they find the people who are changing and saving the world, they want to be with you. Easy to say, harder to do. But when they hear the testimonies about fundraising for some other organization that's going to make people's lives better, that's worthwhile. When they find out that there's a program where everyone from kindergarten through old age is engaged in conversations around sexuality and relationships and ethics and how all that comes together. And that's a place that all of us can find questions to be answered, or at least to be discussed. That's radical, quite honestly. The society doesn't offer those things very well. When you offer people a place to connect and grow and be who they become, who they would like to be, you grow. And it's always a unique recipe. The UUA used to have a program where they recognized breakthrough congregations. There was this hope that they would identify, and and they truly, there are some amazing stories out there. There was a hope that they would be able to, at some point, identify the pieces of the puzzle that would work for everyone. That was delusional. They're all unique recipes. You need to find yours. It starts with working together well. Fighting with each other is a great way to drive people away. It is the best way. Having fights over things that are truly trivial is a great way to keep people from joining, whether the coffee is strong enough or not. Seriously, these folks don't have any connection with reality. I have more serious things to worry about. I have seen a 45-minute conversation in a congregational meeting over the strength of the coffee. Now, behave well together. Respect each other. Ask questions. Be really interested and be supportive of each other. People have very few places today in our world for community, for being part of a place where people really see them and care, want to know what you think, might even change their minds, but don't have to. That's rare. Offer that to people. How do you expect we will grow? By surprise, probably when you least expect it. I have seen congregations grow. I have seen it happening. I have seen congregations pushing to grow and have nothing happen. Uh, People will show up. People show up every week. Right now, with the state of the larger society, people drop into our congregations every week. Years ago, when General Assembly was in Salt Lake City, there was a Mormon elder holding some high office who came to address us. And at some point in some meeting, he said, if you kept a reasonable fraction of the number of the people who come to visit you, you would be dangerous. The number of people who come visiting us to see if we are who and what we claim we are or are aspiring to be is the envy of every tradition. There's a real possibility in our congregations, and we have to figure out how to be that sticky place where people want to stay and don't drift away too easily. We make it easy to drift away. I haven't seen Bob in weeks. I wonder where he is. I don't know. And no one calls to ask. That's not caring. Spirit. When the Spirit says do, you refer to Spirit at times, either quoting a writer or on your own. Please talk about what you mean and are referring to when you speak of Spirit. I think there's more to it for you than my individual spirit. Maybe. In the past, a lot of Unitarian Universalist ministers have suggested that we need to, all of us, not just the ministers, operate with that Star Trek Universal Translator, right? What's important isn't what I mean. It may be informative, it may make you think, but what's important is what you think and feel and experience, and that we're all open to change. We use language that each of us can interpret and understand in our own way. I have colleagues who went into seminary with me, committed theists of some stripe or another, believers in God in some manner, who exited seminary as atheists. I have seminary colleagues who went in as firm, committed atheists and came out of seminary as committed theists. We can change. Being open to change is good. The language that we use needs to be open to being understood, interpreted by any of us. What do I mean by spirit? It changes from day to day. I do not obsess very much, not anymore, about whether I believe in God or not. It varies. There are days when I like the idea. There are days when I truly couldn't begin to believe at all. I am a part-time agnostic. I am a religious naturalist, and I'm not very worried about the labels. What is the word for you? When I say spirit of life, it's an attempt to say that thing, which one of my former ministers, the late Dwight Smith of blessed memory, used to say, that which has been called God. Dwight was an atheist. That which has been called God. What is it we're pointing to when we use that label? Or at least gesture towards it. When we're talking about what's of ultimate importance, spirit of life, the planet is riddled with life. We have every reason to believe that the universe is riddled with life. We don't really quite understand how and where and why that happens. It seems to arise out of the very nature of the universe as best I understand it. What is the essence or the energy, the thing behind that? I don't know. But when we talk about these things, we sense that there's something going on that language doesn't address well. And the mystics all kind of sound the same when you can apply that translator and see that past that language. They're pointing to this experience. What do I mean? I mean that there is something that we share, and it doesn't matter if you're an atheist or a theist or something else. We need to have hooks that we can use for the conversation. Spirit is a hook. Feeling. The Holy Spirit, right? There's a word. When you go back to the Greek and to the Hebrew, you find people talking about, well, in Hebrew, it's ruach. It means breath. The holy breath, life, the spirit of life. What is it that is going on? We're addressing that, and it's a mystery. How do you want to address and think of the mystery right now? Do that. That's what I'm pointing to. And if it changes, good. We're supposed to evolve. What aspects of Beacon make you most optimistic about the future of our congregation? The warmth of the community. You guys have fun together. You like being together. You choose to be together. Right there, that's a huge thing. There are congregations which have no appreciable social life. And there are congregations that, quite honestly, that's all they have. There's a kind of a country club there. And there's nothing deeper. I think there are both here. I think I have talked to people about deep things. You are truly committed to the community beyond your walls. You care a lot about the good of your larger community, about the poor, the homeless, the marginalized in this community. Those things make me most hopeful because they're the things that will keep this congregation thriving no matter what. There's the technical things. You're not in debt. That's good. You're generous. Your pledge campaign has done well, I am told. People are waiting on the last pledges still. Unitarian Universalists. We'll get there when we get there. Being willing to change. That's there. You were willing to move the chairs around again and put up a screen and do things. You're willing to change. That's critical. The world, if you haven't noticed, is changing dramatically, violently, in ways, many of them that we don't like or don't want. But you will have to change with them. What aspects of Beacon make you most pessimistic about our future? Honestly, it's not specifically about you. It's about a dynamic in the larger society. It is harder to sustain a congregation today than it was in the past. You have, I know you'll be surprised when I tell you this, you have less time, less energy, less money available to you because it is sucked up by all kinds of other things. Because the society isn't very friendly right now to religious organizations. It isn't structured around making Sunday mornings available for people. There are competing things. It is more expensive to do all the things that make up a congregation. The bills are bigger. The costs are all higher. And all the people who you hire to do the work have to be paid. That used to be something that a congregation of 100 or so people could sustain, which is the average size of a congregation of any sort across the country. Now, probably takes 150 to really sustain those things that congregations want and expect. And so either how we do things and how we staff things and what we have and how we use it, that has to change, or we have to grow. And growth is hard and has to be a result, not a goal. Not pessimistic, but it is a real challenge. In past times, when Beacon had families with children and RE, the energy was wonderful. How something members with children. The critical mass seems to be about 6 kids. Yeah, about 6 kids. There's a lot there. Across the continent for at least 20 years, almost all of our congregations have experienced declining religious education for children, the numbers. And for a while, people were frantic and were convinced we were doing something wrong. It's a demographic issue. It's a demographic issue. If you look around the room, hi. Hi. I mean, this is a room full of white folks, or passing for white folks, which is kind of the same thing. And that's true in most of our congregations. And if you look at the demographics of the larger society, it's the white folks who are older, and the ones who are younger have fewer kids than they used to in the past. So the fact that there are fewer children present is just the way it is. And if you want that to change, you need to change. We have a culture, and when people who aren't just like us come through the doors, they feel it. They feel it. And then they decide whether or not they can pass or fit in, or whether the place might be changing in a way that's open to them. And it comes in all kinds of ways. In music, in food, in the way people talk to each other, sometimes it's the way things smell. All right? When you come into a space and it's part of another culture, have you had that experience going into a place that is really held by a different ethnic community and a different culture? And white folks aren't as experienced in the code switching that goes on. People of color, people of ethnic communities, whatever language we're using to describe them, are used to having to navigate more than one world. They code switch, right? Expecting them to do what they have to do at work or at school when they're in their spiritual community is kind of a burden. How are we open to people who are not just like us? How do we make them feel comfortable? How do we make them feel that this place is open to not just them, because we love everybody, but to who they and their larger identity, their community is? It's tough. There are some congregations that pull it off. They work at it explicitly. And it's not easy to do in smaller communities, in smaller congregations, in smaller cities. It's just tough. So figuring out how you provide what people with kids need, making that a priority so that when they arrive, they recognize that you're happy to see them and that you're happy to see their kids and you're here and committed to their growth and well-being. That says a lot. Complaining that the kids make some noise, toxic. I'm glad when I hear those sounds. Okay. The kid who runs off screaming, the kid who cries, that's the sound of life. Be delighted. Really be delighted. Um, it'll happen. It'll happen. And we have some upcoming services where someone will come in by Zoom and speak to us, because they're kind of a specialist in this, speak to us about this whole notion of being welcoming. How are we more open than we think we are? What do you like most and least about Flagstaff? This is a gorgeous place. I don't know if you've noticed. This is, I mean, I have lived, as I said earlier, all over the world. I have seen amazing beauty and places that this is a gorgeous spot. I love that. I love being able to get on the road coming up and see the mountains. I miss that in New Hampshire. There's so many trees and you never even see the ridge lines because it's just this green mossy thing. Getting out here where things are a little more open and honestly the terrain is more rugged and you can see the shape of the ground. I love that. And that's a personal like. My wife, when we got back to the East Coast, was like, oh, the forest is like, and I was like, I feel claustrophobic. um, this is a beautiful, beautiful place. The larger community has so much going on in it. There's a lot to love here. What do I like least? It's a little isolated in some ways, and that's just a reality. I'm closer to my family than I was, but it's still a day's drive. And there are people I know down south who I'd like to be better connected to, but you know, that's a half day at least to go and just go have lunch or something. I don't spend a lot of time on what I like least about a place. I have lived so many places, truly, you know, the potted plant gets picked up and moved. And as long as there's sunlight, uh, there are beautiful things here. There are drawbacks to everywhere. I like it here. In your free time, what are your favorite activities? I read. I've done that since I was a kid. I play computer games. I find it's a great way for me to unplug my brain from both all the work stuff and the woes of the world and kind of do something that occupies that have to do something as I push buttons and chase pixels down. I wouldn't say it's meditative, but it does disconnect and kind of just let things spin. I'm not much for watching TV. I'm kind of selective. My wife will present things and sometimes we sit and watch some really good stuff together. Um, playing with the dogs, playing with the dogs. I have not done it in years for a variety of reasons. I used to and still love the idea of doing woodwork, carving, making things. I've got a long list of hobbies. What do you like most about being a UU minister? Now, you see, that really requires a much larger conversation. I didn't plan to do this. I didn't know I was going to do this. This was a surprise to me. And I can honestly say I fought it hard. Literally, there was a point where our minister at the time asked me if I was going to go to seminary or what. And my response, off the top of my head, unconscious, I do not remember saying it, but it's been quoted back to me repeatedly now. Do I have to? Yeah, I had to. What do I like most about it? I like feeding the community. I think that our congregations are really important. I think that what you are doing is important, really important. And think that I think it's important to feed that. And that's what I'm called to do. What do I like? Making it work, making it happen. It ain't easy. Boy, people are tough to work with. It's all made of people, and that makes it hard.